Welcome to Speaking Holistically, the podcast that explores the power of alternative medicine, natural healing, and homeopathic solutions to help you achieve true wellness. Each week, Dr. Jen and Amy G dive into the world of holistic health, discussing researched, time-tested remedies with expert insights from Dr. Jen, as well as real-life stories from patients to empower you to take charge of your health. So if you're ready to embrace a more natural path to wellness, let's start speaking holistically, because true healing begins from within. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Speaking Holistically. I'm your co-host, Amy G. I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Dr. Jen, and we're doing a Family Health Hub episode, particularly for women's health, and we're talking about breastfeeding.
We're actually talking about breast milk. This is something that I've dealt with for many years with myself as well as my patients. And there's still a lot of questions regarding it, even though it's something that's so easy and so natural, and sometimes it doesn't quite feel that way for a lot of women. So I wanted to give a little bit more information that people may not know. So basically with breastfeeding, there's a symbiotic relationship. The moms produce the breast milk. The babies obviously ingest it, but here's what's really interesting is a lot of us don't know that when the baby actually latches onto the breast, their saliva tells the breast cells what immunoglobulins, what immunities the baby actually needs. That's why breastfed babies are rarely sick.
What?
Yes. So a lot of people don't realize that, but it's a symbiotic relationship. The other thing is that when women breastfeed, literally every year of breastfeeding decreases a woman's risk of female cancers, of ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, breast cancer, bone cancer. And so once they get to 7 years cumulatively, because people are like 7 years, I was like, no, cumulatively, y'all. It basically takes your risk of cancers down to female cancers, at least down to almost zero. So that helps.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it helps the women, but it also helps the baby's IQ because of the essential fatty acids that are in there, the combination of the right amounts of protein versus fats in the breast milk. So obviously breastfed babies, there's some people who can't breastfeed, so there's no harm, no foul. I'm not bagging on anybody for whatever choices or whatever their bodies weren't able to do. That's not what this is about, but I just want to give information on this. So for some people who are kind of like, well, it doesn't make any difference. It could for some people. The foods that are generally an issue if mom's eating them that can become an issue for the babies are wheat, dairy. Butter seems to be okay for whatever reason because it's clarified, I guess, but most dairies are terrible for breastfed moms and the babies. Tomatoes, and that also includes pasta sauce and ketchup, which people don't think, well, I'm not eating tomatoes. And I was like, well, you're having ketchup every day. Cruciferous vegetables, so like broccoli, cauliflower, stuff like that, that's going to cause the baby to be gassy. Soy sometimes can be an issue, and also berries. So this is one that people don't really realize, but blueberries tends to be okay. All the other berries with the seeds on the outside seem to have an issue for the baby's gut. Now, why that is, I don't know, because they're not actually getting the seeds through the breast milk and into their gut, but it may be some sort of histamine reaction that I'm not 100% sure of why that happens, but it happens to be an issue for a lot of moms. So they'll ask me, well, what am I supposed to eat? I'm like, well, there's a lot of other things to eat. You can eat red meat, you can eat chicken generally, you can have rice, you can have maybe chickpea pasta. There's a lot of stuff that you can do outside of that. The one thing though I tell people is that generally speaking, it takes about 8 hours from the time you ingest it to the time it gets into the breast milk.
Okay.
So that's not something that's well known or known at all. And the only reason I know it is because I, of course, love science. And I would pump periodically because I had national boards or whatever was going on. And I would have pesto, and 8 hours later, my breast milk that I was pumping was green. So then I did it again just to kind of see like where we were with it. So if there's some reaction your baby's having, their gut is distended, they're cramping, they're crying, they're screaming, go back to 8 hours before and figure out what you ate. The other thing that happens is, let's say, oh, I'm just having a cup of coffee in the morning. Well, if that takes 8 hours potentially to get into your breast milk, it's bedtime for baby, and now you don't understand why the baby's not sleeping.
Wow.
Okay, so And some moms will still do it and their babies will still cry and be upset and stuff. But really, having that information, you can make that decision whether you want to keep going down that path or change paths for sure. There are breast milk alternatives. Very often, goat's milk tends to be the primary thing. Well, they say cow's milk. So a lot of the formulas and stuff are cow's milk based, which can be really, really hard on some of the baby's stomachs and stuff like that. So I tend to encourage goat's milk. And actually out here, we have quite a few camels, and camel milk actually, this is where people are going to be like, wait, what? But like, I mean, how would that be any different than cow's milk? We're just so used to drinking cow's milk as a society that it doesn't seem weird. But really, at the end of the day, it's just one species drinking another species milk. And you don't really see that in the wild. You don't see gorillas going after giraffes and stuff like that. But we don't tend to have a problem saying, oh, well, it's just cow's milk. Well, there's no difference with going after a camel. But actually, donkey milk has similar proteins and fats and bionutrients, more similar than any of those other milks to breast milk. So people are talking about donkey milk, horse milk, camel milk, goat's milk, and then cow's milk down the road.
What?
I knew you would have something to say.
I, in a million years, would have never thought. First of all, I never would have thought that. But also, just camel's milk in general wouldn't have, or donkey's milk, never would have entered my mind.
Well, because as a society, we're like, oh, cow's milk, cow's milk, cow's milk. Cheese is made out of cow's milk. Like we use so much in the way of cows that it's actually one of the highest allergens as far for these babies. And whether it's because of something that the cows are actually eating, the hormones that they're being given to keep those female cows making milk long past when they're supposed to. And I'm not saying all of it. You can do raw cow's milk that may not have the same impact on the baby's stomach. So I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of comments on this episode for sure. So, but I just want to kind of expand the horizons a little bit so that if your baby's having an issue with this, and very often there's way more options now than there was 22, 23, 24, 25 years ago. As far as formulas and stuff go, back then it was basically Similac. Nutramigen was probably the easiest on most of the baby's tummies. And so maybe doing half goat's milk and half water with Nutramigen would help with some of them. But now we've got organic formula from Germany, generally is one of the better brands. There's a couple of brands from Germany that you can get that are organic and a lot safer. But even then, mixing it with water sometimes doesn't make it a complete protein. So if they can mix it with goat's milk or whatever, or even half goat's milk and half water, and play with those different things for each individual baby, it can make a huge difference if they have to use formula. But at the end of the day, that symbiotic relationship with the mom and baby, not to mention the bonding and everything else. Not that you can't bond if you're giving your baby a bottle, but at the end of the day, I mean, the protective, measures that the mom gets from breastfeeding and the baby basically gets instant immune support by the saliva cells telling the breast cells basically what to make is pretty impressive.
I mean, that blew my mind when you said that. I was completely shocked.
Yeah, and it's not something that we're all necessarily aware of. I've done a lot of reading over the years for sure, because it is obviously something dear and near to my heart. I had 4 babies, and of course I breastfed all of them. My mother-in-law asked me 6 weeks into having my first child, when are you going to wean that boy? And I was like, I haven't even gotten a hang of it yet. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is still really hard for me. And I had a doctorate at that point. I could have done that 4 times over for how hard it was for me. It wasn't as intuitive as I thought it was going to be with the breastfeeding and everything else. So it was quite a bit, but she had stopped breastfeeding at 3 weeks. She was told by her doctor to stop breastfeeding at 3 weeks. So here I am twice past where she is, and her sense of self or self-esteem was a little crushed. I think that I had somehow done better than her or whatever. And I don't judge. Like, we're all doing the best job we can. At 6 weeks, I was like, good God. I think it was probably four to 6 months with the first baby before I felt like, all right, I got this, Always encouraging moms, don't give up, don't give up. So sometimes this is super easy for other people. Sometimes it's super hard. The size of the breast. You're suffocating your kid while your friends have an A cup and they're popping the kid on and eating their salad, and you're like holding tissue back so you don't suffocate them, Get lunch, you're not eating it, at least not at that point. So There's inverted nipples, there's all sorts of things. And then you have to wear a nipple guard potentially. So there's a lot of stuff out there that can make things a little bit more challenging for sure. And then having the support at home too is really, really important. So if I had lived with my mother-in-law, not that she was a terrible person, she wasn't, but if I had only that support at home, it would have been a lot more difficult for me to get through some of the nights and the days and all the other stuff that went on. So
Sure. Now, let me ask you this. So you talked about milk alternatives. Where could breastfeeding moms that need to supplement or they're not able to breastfeed, or maybe like me, I just didn't take to it as a baby, and my mom was like, yeah, you just wouldn't do it. You wouldn't latch on. You just want no part of it. So for people looking for milk alternatives, where can they find them typically?
well, most of the states have they all have different laws. So it's hard to say depending on what state you're in,
Mhm.
Um, California, I believe you can sell camel milk, but it's not for human ingestion. I'm not 100% sure. And this stuff constantly is changing too.
Sure.
So, it depends. There's local stores, there's homestead exchanges, there's all sorts of places that you can find, and ask questions like, what are you feeding this animal? I have friends that have tons of goats, and the milk supposedly it doesn't taste like hay. I thought, oh, it'd probably be super super gnarly, and they were like, no, 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 it actually smells like vanilla. So it's whatever they're feeding those goats, the milk will smell basically like what they're feeding them. So that's another thing. So if you got goat's milk once and your baby didn't take to it, try it from somewhere else. But even I want to say Sprouts has raw milk, raw goat's milk and
I'm
stuff like
sure
that.
they probably do. Yeah.
So there's lots and lots of options with how you want to handle that, but that will also sometimes take care of the raw milk, especially with probiotics, natural probiotics that are in it, can actually help with the baby's gut and any kind of skin conditions. It can be helpful. Like I said, every baby's different, every mom is different, so you're going to have to check that out for yourself. But those are at least some little tidbits on breastfeeding and the importance of it. So if you're struggling a little bit, find people who support you. There's La Leche League groups. I mean, now with social media, you can probably hop on and find some naturally minded breastfeeding support group or something. But anything that you can find is out there. And that wasn't the case 25 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot more resources available. Well, this is probably going to be the episode where we get the most responses, questions, comments, reactions. You saw some of mine, obviously. I didn't expect you to say the things you were saying. So, and I'm not a mother, and so I didn't breastfeed or anything. I was absolutely floored by what you shared. So, very interesting stuff. Well, thank you, Dr. Jen, as always, for your wisdom and knowledge. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Join our school community if you haven't before. I'll put the link down below in the show notes. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
That wraps up another episode of Speaking Holistically. Thank you for listening. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights and inspiration to take charge of your health. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, be sure and join the Speaking Holistically school community by clicking the link in the show notes. There, you'll get access to daily podcast episodes, weekly live Q&As, educational content, and so much more. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, be well, stay curious, and keep speaking holistically.